January 13th, 1944, 03:17 hours, RAF Tangmere, Sussex. The station is mostly dark, blackout curtains, hooded lamps, a world trained not to shine. But along the dispersal pens, the ground crews move like men who've done this in nightmares so often, it's become routine. Boots crunch frost. Spanners clink once, too loud, then get swallowed by the wind coming off the channel. A supermarine Spitfire Mark 14 sits with its nose into the cold, exhaust stubs rimmed with rime. The Griffin engine is a sleeping animal under metal skin. On the port side, a corporal with oil-black hands, fitter 2, aero engine, Tom Taff Evans, leans in close to the cowling seam, listening as if the machine might confess something. Behind him, under the thin light of a shaded torch, Sergeant James Jock McLeod, RAF Regiment, here as a liaison with the station's defense flight, watches the perimeter and watches the men. He's not meant to be part of the servicing party. He's here because the rumor has teeth, and Air Ministry orders have a way of turning into funerals when they're ignored. A lorry idles a short distance away, engine muffled, canvas sides pulled tight. The driver keeps his cap brim down. The vehicle shouldn't be here at this hour with no paperwork in the dispatch pouch. Yet it is. And in the back, padded by straw and secrecy, are metal jerry cans with stenciling that doesn't match the station's fuel stores. Evans reaches up and taps the side of the Spitfire's fuel tank access panel. 2 quick knocks, then 1. A code. A signal that says, "Are we doing this?" Flight Lieutenant Peter Paddy Hargreaves, DFC, strides in from the shadow of the wing. He smells of cigarette smoke and damp sheepskin. His face is pale where the oxygen mask has rubbed it raw, eyes red from too little sleep and too much adrenaline. At Tangmere, they've been flying diver patrols, low, violent intercepts against the V-1 flying bombs that have started to appear across the water like mechanical insects with a buzz that makes London flinch. Hargreaves stops beside Evans and keeps his voice low. "Is it ready?" Evans doesn't answer immediately. He tilts the torch beam so it glances off the fuel gauge glass. Then he looks up, meeting the pilot's eyes the way a man looks at someone asking him to cross a line. "It'll run," Evans says. "It'll run like you've never felt it run. But you push her hard, sir, and the Griffin will tell on us." Hargreaves gives a short, humorless breath. "Let it tell. If the diver gets through, my engine won't be the only thing that's burned." McLeod shifts, hearing the words and feeling the weight behind them. He has been in France in 1940, seen the retreat. He has watched men die because they were outpaced by tanks, by artillery, by decisions made far away. This is different. This is a pilot asking for speed the book says he shouldn't have. And the book, there's always a book. The Air Ministry has rules about fuel, about octane ratings, about what can be run through Merlin and Griffin engines without detonation, without blown pistons, without a trail of smoke that ends in a crater. But on stations like Tangmere, where the coast is close enough that you can taste salt on every breath, the rules have begun to bend under a new enemy. The V-1 doesn't dogfight. It doesn't fear. It just comes, straight line, constant pulse jet throb, a little winged coffin packed with explosives. If it crosses the coast, it's too late for the people under it. If it drops its nose and the buzzing stops, you've got seconds to decide whether to look away. Hargreaves steps nearer the wing route. The Spitfire's paint is dull, scuffed by salt air and hurried servicing. There's a faint, oily smell, and beneath it, something sharper, like solvent, like something not standard. Evans follows his gaze and lowers his voice another notch. 2 tins, he says. One's the proper stuff. One's not. Say it, Hargreaves replies. Evans swallows. High test. Not on the station books. A blend. Higher octane than we're supposed to touch. McLeod's brows pull together. American? Evans doesn't look at him. Some of it. He hesitates, choosing words carefully. Is from places no one writes down. The lorry driver climbs out, keeping his body between the light and the road. He nods once at Evans, then flips the canvas and reveals the jerry cans. No labels you'd see in daylight, just hand-painted marks and a smell that hits the cold air like a punch. Sweet, volatile, and wrong. You can almost feel the risk in the back of your throat. Hargreaves moves in, and for a second, he looks less like an officer and more like a man in a pub deciding whether to take another drink. His hand rests on the Spitfire's skin, fingers splayed, feeling the metal's chill. How much? He asks. Evans raises 2 fingers. Not full. Enough to spike the mix. Enough to give you the shove. McLeod steps forward. And enough to give you a court-martial. Hargreaves doesn't turn. And enough to catch a diver that otherwise hits Brixton. A gust of wind comes over the field and rattles canvas. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and stops. From a dispersal pen farther down, the faint click of a starter trolley being positioned. Another aircraft being readied. Another man preparing to bet his life on fuel and faith. Evans crouches beside the fuel filler and fits a hose with practiced hands. His movements are efficient, almost gentle, as if harshness might wake the engine and make it angry. The lorry driver holds the jerry can steady while Evans pours. The smell grows stronger. Not just petrol, something sharper, almost chemical. The kind of scent that makes you think of laboratories and warnings and people in white coats who don't have to fly the results. McLeod watches the stream of fuel vanish into the Spitfire like a secret being swallowed. You've done this before, he says to Evans. Evans doesn't look up. Not with the Mark 14. Not with a Griffin this tight. Hargreaves' jaw clenches. She'll take it. Evans gives a tiny shake of his head. She might. Or she might pink like a bastard under boost. And then you're not chasing a V1, sir. You're nursing a wounded engine over water. Hargreaves finally turns to face McLeod. Tell me something, Sergeant. If you could make your rifle fire faster to stop a bloke lobbing grenades into a nursery, would you? Or would you quote regulation at the parents? McLeod's mouth tightens. He's heard similar arguments from men about looting in France, about borrowing vehicles, about orders that made no sense in the mud. The difference here is the stakes are measured in thousands of civilians, women, children, men who have never seen a runway, sleeping under a weapon that doesn't care who they are. He exhales slowly. I'd do what I had to, he admits. Then, quieter. But I'd want to know who gave you those cans. Evans caps the filler, wipes his hands on a rag, and stands. The rag comes away black. He glances at the lorry driver, and the driver looks away, as if even eye contact could be evidence. No one gave them, Evans says. They appeared, same as the divers appeared. Hargreaves steps onto the wing root and lowers himself into the cockpit. The seat creaks. The harness straps slap against the armor plate. His gloved hands move through the ritual. Switches, levers, checks, like prayer in a language learned from fear. Evans signals the starter trolley. The mechanic on the trolley nods and engages. For a moment, there's only wind. Then the Griffin coughs. 1, 2, like a giant clearing its throat. The propeller blades blur. The engine catches, deep and violent. a sound that fills the darkness and makes your chest vibrate. The exhaust spits white-blue flame in quick flashes as the cylinders bite into life. Hargreaves leans forward and watches the gauges. Oil pressure climbing, coolant beginning to move. The needle steadies, but beneath the steadiness there's a faint, irregular tremor, subtle, like a heartbeat that's too fast. Evans hears it too. His eyes narrow. He listens not just to the roar, but to the tiny metallic ticks inside it. The first hints of detonation if the mixture is too hot under load. Hargreaves raises the revs slightly. The engine responds instantly, eager. Too eager. The airframe seems to tense, as if the Spitfire wants to leap out of the chocks and run. McLeod takes a half-step back from the prop wash. His eyes water in the blast. He can feel the ground vibrate under his boots. Evans leans close to the cockpit and shouts over the engine, voice barely carrying. "Keep the boost disciplined, sir! Don't ride it like a stallion!" Hargreaves's eyes flick to him, fierce and bright. He gives a single nod that could mean yes, or could mean, "I'll do what I must." A runner appears from the operations hut. Helmet, greatcoat, clipboard clutched to his chest. He runs bent over against the wind, boots slipping on frost. He reaches the aircraft and signals urgently. Hargreaves throttles back slightly. The Griffin settles into a heavy idle, still snarling. The runner leans in, shouting into the cockpit. "Diver plot! Coming in fast! Estimated coast crossing in 6 minutes!" 6 minutes? That's not a lot of runway. Not a lot of conversation. Not a lot of conscience. Evans looks at McLeod, and for the first time, his expression cracks. Fear, pride, defiance, all in the same flicker. McLeod's mind races. If this works, they'll never admit it. If it fails, they'll bury it in paperwork and blame a pilot who can't testify. And somewhere in London, a family will either wake up tomorrow or they won't. Hargreaves pushes the canopy closed. The perspex seals with a thud that makes him suddenly distant, like a man behind glass in a museum display, alive, but already part of history. He raises his hand in a quick salute to Evans, not regulation, more intimate than that. A thank you between men who understand what they're doing. Evans returns it with a grim nod. The chocks are kicked away. The Spitfire begins to roll, tail wheel squeaking over the hard ground, propeller clawing the night. It turns toward the runway lights, dim, hooded, barely visible, a path laid out like a secret. McLeod watches it go and feels a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Tonight, they're not just fighting the Germans. They're fighting time, physics, and the RAF's own rules. And somewhere in that unmarked fuel is a gamble big enough to change the way this war is fought along the channel. As the Spitfire lines up and Hargreaves opens the throttle, the Griffin's roar deepens. Then, for the briefest instant, there's a sharp metallic crack inside the sound. A ping, a warning, a whisper that the engine has noticed the forbidden mixture. Evans's face drains of color, because if that's detonation at idle, what happens when Hargreaves shoves the boost forward in the climb, chasing a V1 that doesn't slow for anyone? The Spitfire's nose dips a fraction as the Griffin coughs again. Not a clean miss, but a brutal hiccup, power dropping away in uneven bursts. Hargreaves feels it instantly in his gut, the way you feel a lift cable shudder when it's about to snap. He eases the throttle back and the engine steadies, barely. He pushes it forward and the roughness returns, sharper, like stones rattling in a tin. The needle on the boost gauge trembles in quick, nervous spasms. Detonation under load. The thing Evans feared. Hargreaves steadies his breathing, forcing himself into the calm that keeps men alive. A rough-running engine over land is a problem. Over black water, at night, it's a decision waiting to be made for you. He checks his height, just enough to glide if he has to. He checks his heading. The coast should be behind him to the west-northwest. He can't see it, but he believes in it, the way you believe in a stair that's supposed to be there in the dark. "Come on," he mutters, not into the mic, into the mask, into the machine. Control's voice returns, clipped by interference. "Blue Leader, Vector 295, Angels, maintain, report if able." 295, back toward home. Hargreaves turns carefully, banking shallow to keep the engine load smooth. He doesn't dare yank the aircraft around. Every sharp input is a demand on the engine. Every demand risks another cough that doesn't recover. The sea below remains invisible, but his imagination paints it anyway. Cold, heavy, the kind of water that steals heat and breath and hope in minutes. In daytime, you'd see whitecaps. Tonight, there is only the knowledge of it. Then, like a bruise forming, he sees a faint smear of darker dark ahead, the coast. And beyond that, a pinprick of light that must be a hooded beacon, the RAF's dim handshake to returning pilots. He exhales, slow. The engine coughs again. Oil pressure dips a little more and doesn't come back as quickly. He feels the Spitfire's airframe tremble as if it's shivering. But it's not cold. It's mechanical protest. The forbidden fuel mix has done its job, given speed, given reach. But now, with the urgency fading, the bill arrives in installments. Heat, stress, a combustion cycle pushed too hard. It isn't dramatic like a fireball. It's worse. It's insidious. Hargreaves thinks of London, of the V1 he tipped into death, and tries to hold on to that as justification. He imagines the impact that didn't happen, the family that will wake up instead of being buried under bricks. Then he imagines Evans. Mechanics don't get medals for victories. They get reprimands for failures. They get blamed for what pilots survive. He decides, in that instant, he's not going to die without leaving evidence. He clicks the transmit switch. "Control, Blue Leader. Engine failure likely due to fuel. Request engineering officer informed. This is not standard issue." Silence. A long hiss. Then Control, cautious. "Blue Leader, say fuel?" Hargreaves chooses his words with care. "High test blend. Unofficial. It gave me the speed to catch the diver. It is now punishing the engine." He knows how that sounds. Like madness. Like insubordination wrapped in heroism. Like something a board of inquiry can slice into pieces. He adds, softer, almost to himself, "But it worked." A burst of static. Then Control again, voice suddenly less bureaucratic. "Blue Leader, understood. Priority is your recovery. You are cleared for emergency landing. Tangmere standing by." Tangmere. Home. He can almost see the runway now, not with eyes, but with memory. The narrow strip, the hooded lamps, the smell of oil and frost. Evans's hands, greasy and careful, putting the aircraft into the air. Hargreaves keeps the boost low and nurses the engine toward the field, refusing every instinct that wants to push. He's slow now, vulnerable. If a night fighter appears, if flak opens, if another V1 comes and he's tasked again, he doesn't have the margin. But the sky stays empty. Back at Tangmere, the moment the call comes in, "Blue Leader returning, engine rough," the station wakes in a controlled panic. Men spill from huts, helmets half-fastened, collar tabs crooked. A crash tender lumbers toward the runway with its lights hooded but ready. An ambulance waits like a quiet threat. Evans hears it through the grapevine before he hears it officially. He's already moving, running toward the flight line, heart banging in his ribs. McLeod catches up, boots skidding on the frozen track. "Evans!" McLeod calls. "What did you put in that tank?" Evans doesn't slow. "Enough to get him there." "And enough to bring him down," McLeod snaps. Evans whirls briefly, face lit by a dim lamp. The bravado is gone. What remains is a mechanic's grim calculation, the kind that happens when you're trying to keep an engine alive with nothing but experience. "I did what he asked," Evans says, "and what we all needed." McLeod matches his stride. "Needed isn't authorized." Evans's laugh is short and bitter. "Authorized never caught a diver." They reach the runway edge. The crash tender's crew are in position, fire extinguishers ready. The medical orderly stands with hands in pockets, looking up into the dark like he can call an aircraft down by willpower. Then someone points. A shape emerges out of the night, low and fast, landing light not yet on. The Spitfire's engine note is wrong, uneven, strained. It doesn't sing. It limps. Hargraves drops the undercarriage. The wheels thunk down, but he doesn't trust the hydraulics fully. He gives the lever another check, eyes locked on the indicator lights. He keeps one hand ready to cut the engine if it surges or catches fire. He turns final. The runway appears. Dim beads of light, a dark strip, and beyond it, nothing. He flicks the landing light on for a moment, just long enough to confirm position, then off again, blackout discipline drilled into bone. He eases the aircraft down. For a second it feels like it might float too far. He's a fraction fast because he's terrified to pull power back further. But he forces himself to commit, lowering the nose, bleeding speed. The wheels touch, harder than he wants. The Spitfire bounces once. Evans's breath catches. Hargreaves fights the urge to yank back. He holds it steady, lets it settle, then keeps it straight with rudder as the aircraft rattles along the frost-slick runway. Then the Griffin coughs, splutters, and quits entirely, as if it's been holding on only to get him home. The propeller windmills, then slows. The silence that follows is thick and shocking. The Spitfire rolls on momentum alone. Hargreaves keeps it straight, braking gently until it comes to a stop near the end of the strip. Evans is already running. The crash crew move with him, but he's faster, fueled by guilt and adrenaline and the need to see if the man inside is alive. He reaches the cockpit as Hargreaves pushes the canopy back. Cold air rushes in. Hargreaves' face is pale, damp with sweat, eyes bloodshot. Evans grips the side of the cockpit. "You caught it?" he asks, voice cracking despite himself. Hargreaves nods once, slow. "Tipped it." Evans' shoulders sag with relief that nearly looks like prayer. Then Hargreaves' eyes harden, and the relief turns into something else. "And my engine's finished," he says. Evans swallows. "We can—" "No," Hargreaves cuts in. "Not finished like needs a tune. Finished like someone's going to ask why it was run that hard and what was in it." McLeod arrives, breath steaming. He stops just behind Evans, taking in the dead engine, the silent prop, the pilot alive but shaken. Hargreaves looks from Evans to McLeod and back. "Who else knows?" he asks. Evans' mouth tightens. "No one who'll admit it." Hargreaves gives a tired, ugly smile. "They will now." Because even as he speaks, a staff car's headlights sweep briefly across the far end of the field, hooded slits in the darkness. The car moves faster than a routine call. It stops near the operations hut.
A figure steps out, greatcoat belted tight, cap pulled low. Not a station officer. Someone from outside. Someone who doesn't belong here at 0330. McLeod's stomach drops. "That's Air Ministry," he says quietly.
Evans looks toward the car, then back at Hargreaves. His face has the expression of a man who realizes the gamble didn't end in the sky. It only moved the fight to the ground. Hargreaves swings his legs out of the cockpit and drops to the tarmac. He wobbles slightly, adrenaline draining, fatigue hitting. Evans reaches out to steady him, and for a moment, it's not ranks or regulations, just two men holding each other upright. Then the Air Ministry man starts walking toward them. His shoes click on the frozen ground with deliberate calm. He has a folder under his arm. And the first words out of his mouth when he gets close enough are not, "Well done," or, "Are you injured?" They are, "Flight Lieutenant Hargreaves, what fuel did you fly on tonight?" The Spitfire's nose dips a fraction as the Griffin coughs again. Not a clean miss, but a brutal hiccup, power dropping away in uneven bursts. Hargreaves feels it instantly in his gut, the way you feel a lift cable shudder when it's about to snap. He eases the throttle back, and the engine steadies, barely. He pushes it forward, and the roughness returns, sharper, like stones rattling in a tin. The needle on the boost gauge trembles in quick, nervous spasms. Detonation under load, the thing Evans feared. Hargreaves steadies his breathing, forcing himself into the calm that keeps men alive. A rough-running engine over land is a problem. Over black water, at night, it's a decision waiting to be made for you. He checks his height, just enough to glide if he has to. He checks his heading. The coast should be behind him to the west-northwest. He can't see it, but he believes in it the way you believe in a stair that's supposed to be there in the dark. "Come on," he mutters. Not into the mic, into the mask, into the machine. Control's voice returns, clipped by interference. "Blue Leader, Vector 295, Angels, maintain, report if able." 295, back toward home. Hargreaves turns carefully, banking shallow to keep the engine load smooth. He doesn't dare yank the aircraft around. Every sharp input is a demand on the engine. Every demand risks another cough that doesn't recover. The sea below remains invisible, but his imagination paints it anyway, cold, heavy, the kind of water that steals heat and breath and hope in minutes. In daytime, you'd see whitecaps. Tonight, there is only the knowledge of it. Then, like a bruise forming, he sees a faint smear of darker dark ahead, the coast. And beyond that, a pinprick of light that must be a hooded beacon, the RAF's dim handshake to returning pilots. He exhales, slow. The engine coughs again. Oil pressure dips a little more and doesn't come back as quickly. He feels the Spitfire's airframe tremble as if it's shivering, but it's not cold. It's mechanical protest. The forbidden fuel mix has done its job, given speed, given reach. But now, with the urgency fading, the bill arrives in installments. Heat, stress, a combustion cycle pushed too hard. It isn't dramatic like a fireball. It's worse. It's insidious. Hargreaves thinks of London, of the V1 he tipped into death, and tries to hold on to that as justification. He imagines the impact that didn't happen, the family that will wake up instead of being buried under bricks. Then he imagines Evans. Mechanics don't get medals for victories. They get reprimands for failures. They get blamed for what pilots survive. He decides, in that instant, he's not going to die without leaving evidence. He clicks the transmit switch. "Control, Blue Leader. Engine failure likely due to fuel. Request engineering officer informed. This is not standard issue." Silence. A long hiss. Then Control, cautious. Blue leader, say fuel? Hargreaves chooses his words with care. High test blend, unofficial. It gave me the speed to catch the diver. It is now punishing the engine. He knows how that sounds. Like madness. Like insubordination wrapped in heroism. Like something a board of inquiry can slice into pieces. He adds, softer, almost to himself. But it worked. A burst of static, then control again, voice suddenly less bureaucratic. Blue leader understood. Priority is your recovery. You are cleared for emergency landing. Tangmere standing by. Tangmere. Home. He can almost see the runway now, not with eyes, but with memory. The narrow strip, the hooded lamps, the smell of oil and frost. Evans's hands, greasy and careful, putting the aircraft into the air. Hargreaves keeps the boost low and nurses the engine toward the field, refusing every instinct that wants to push. He's slow now, vulnerable. If a night fighter appears, if flak opens, if another V1 comes and he's tasked again, he doesn't have the margin. But the sky stays empty. Back at Tangmere, the moment the call comes in, Blue leader returning, engine rough, the station wakes in a controlled panic. Men spill from huts, helmets half-fastened, collar tabs crooked. A crash tender lumbers toward the runway with its lights hooded but ready. An ambulance waits like a quiet threat. Evans hears it through the grapevine before he hears it officially. He's already moving, running toward the flight line, heart banging in his ribs. McLeod catches up, boots skidding on the frozen track. "Evans," McLeod calls, "what did you put in that tank?" Evans doesn't slow. "Enough to get him there. And enough to bring him down," McLeod snaps. Evans whirls briefly, face lit by a dim lamp. The bravado is gone. What remains is a mechanic's grim calculation. The kind that happens when you're trying to keep an engine alive with nothing but experience. "I did what he asked," Evans says, "and what we all needed." McLeod matches his stride. "Needed isn't authorized." Evans's laugh is short and bitter. "Authorized never caught a diver." They reach the runway edge. The crash tender's crew are in position, fire extinguishers ready. The medical orderly stands with hands in pockets, looking up into the dark like he can call an aircraft down by willpower. Then someone points. A shape emerges out of the night, low and fast, landing light not yet on. The Spitfire's engine note is wrong, uneven, strained. It doesn't sing, it limps. Hargreaves drops the undercarriage. The wheels thunk down, but he doesn't trust the hydraulics fully. He gives the lever another check, eyes locked on the indicator lights. He keeps one hand ready to cut the engine if it surges or catches fire. He turns final. The runway appears, dim beads of light, a dark strip, and beyond it, nothing. He flicks the landing light on for a moment, just long enough to confirm position, then off again. Blackout discipline drilled into bone. He eases the aircraft down. For a second, it feels like it might float too far. He's a fraction fast because he's terrified to pull power back further. But he forces himself to commit, lowering the nose, bleeding speed. The wheels touch, harder than he wants. The Spitfire bounces once. Evans's breath catches. Hargreaves fights the urge to yank back. He holds it steady, lets it settle, then keeps it straight with rudder as the aircraft rattles along the frost-slick runway. Then the Griffin coughs, splutters, and quits entirely, as if it's been holding on only to get him home. The propeller windmills, then slows. The silence that follows is thick and shocking. The Spitfire rolls on momentum alone. Hargreaves keeps it straight, braking gently, until it comes to a stop near the end of the strip. Evans is already running. The crash crew move with him, but he's faster, fueled by guilt and adrenaline and the need to see if the man inside is alive. He reaches the cockpit as Hargreaves pushes the canopy back. Cold air rushes in. Hargreaves' face is pale, damp with sweat, eyes bloodshot. Evans grips the side of the cockpit. "You caught it?" he asks, voice cracking despite himself. Hargreaves nods once, slow. "Tipped it." Evans' shoulders sag with relief that nearly looks like prayer. Then Hargreaves' eyes harden, and the relief turns into something else. "And my engine's finished," he says. Evans swallows. "We can—" "No," Hargreaves cuts in. "Not finished like needs a tune. Finished like someone's going to ask why it was run that hard and what was in it." McLeod arrives, breath steaming. He stops just behind Evans, taking in the dead engine, the silent prop, the pilot alive but shaken. Hargreaves looks from Evans to McLeod and back. "Who else knows?" he asks. Evans's mouth tightens. "No one who'll admit it." Hargreaves gives a tired, ugly smile. "They will now." Because even as he speaks, a staff car's headlights sweep briefly across the far end of the field, hooded slits in the darkness. The car moves faster than a routine call. It stops near the operations hut. A figure steps out, greatcoat belted tight, cap pulled low. Not a station officer, someone from outside. Someone who doesn't belong here at 0330. McLeod's stomach drops. "That's Air Ministry," he says quietly. Evans looks toward the car, then back at Hargreaves. His face has the expression of a man who realizes the gamble didn't end in the sky. It only moved the fight to the ground. Hargreaves swings his legs out of the cockpit and drops to the tarmac. He wobbles slightly, adrenaline draining, fatigue hitting. Evans reaches out to steady him, and for a moment, it's not ranks or regulations, just two men holding each other upright. Then the Air Ministry man starts walking toward them. His shoes click on the frozen ground with deliberate calm. He has a folder under his arm, and the first words out of his mouth when he gets close enough are not, "Well done," or "Are you injured?" They are, "Flight Lieutenant Hargreaves, what fuel did you fly on tonight?" The Air Ministry man stops just outside arm's reach, close enough that Hargreaves can smell damp wool and cologne fighting to cover cigarette smoke. His cap badge catches a sliver of hooded light. His face is narrow, composed. Someone who has learned to keep emotion off the record. "Wing Commander Arthur Pembroke," he says, as if the name itself is a document. "Directorate of Engine Research, Farnborough." Farnborough, the Royal Aircraft Establishment. The place where test pilots and engineers argue with physics until something breaks, then write reports about what broke. The place where unofficial becomes either innovative or criminal, depending on who survives. Hargreaves doesn't salute immediately. He's still half inside the cockpit in his mind, still feeling the shudder, the silence when the engine quit. But training takes over. He salutes, a fraction late. Pembroke's eyes flick to the dead propeller. "You're lucky to be standing." "I didn't come back on luck," Hargreaves replies, voice hoarse. "I came back on a landing." Pembroke doesn't react. "What fuel did you fly on tonight?" Evans's hands curl into fists at his sides. McLeod watches Pembroke like a man watching a trap being set. Hargreaves answers carefully, choosing the kind of words that can't be twisted easily. "I flew on what my ground crew put in the tank." Pembroke's gaze shifts, landing on Evans as if he's just spotted the weak point in a chain. "Name," Pembroke says. Evans hesitates. In that hesitation is everything: his trade, his fear, his pride. His family somewhere in Wales or Portsmouth or Birmingham, depending on the man. The RAF runs on name tags and numbers, and both can become targets. "Corporal Evans," he says. "Fitter." Pembroke nods once, already writing him into a narrative. "And Corporal Evans decided to conduct independent experiments with fuel mixtures on operational aircraft?" McLeod steps forward. "Sir," Pembroke cuts him off without looking. "Who are you?" "Sergeant McLeod, RAF Regiment." "Then you'll understand security, Sergeant," Pembroke says. "This conversation is not for spectators." McLeod doesn't move. "With respect, sir, this is my station." Pembroke's eyes finally meet his, cool and assessing. "With respect, Sergeant, this is my investigation." The cold air bites. Somewhere the crash tender engine idles, a low rumble like distant thunder. A few ground crew hover at the edge of the light, pretending to do jobs while listening. Hargreaves senses the moment tipping. If he lets Pembroke make Evans the culprit, the whole thing becomes simple. A mechanic broke rules, damaged an engine, endangered a pilot. Case closed. No uncomfortable questions about why men are doing it. So Hargreaves steps between them, putting himself back in the line of fire. "I asked for it," he says. "I asked for higher performance for diver patrol." Pembroke's eyebrows lift slightly. "You asked for a fuel blend not authorized by the Air Ministry." "I asked for speed," Hargreaves replies. "The blend delivered it." Pembroke's pen pauses. "And the engine nearly failed." "It did fail," Hargreaves says, nodding toward the silent prop. "It waited until the runway." Pembroke studies him. "You tipped a diver?" "Yes." "With your wing?" "Yes." Pembroke's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes sharpens. Interest. Calculation. He's a man who measures outcomes, and that outcome, destroyed V-1, pilot alive, has weight. He turns his attention back to the aircraft, walking around the Spitfire's nose like a doctor circling a patient. He crouches near an exhaust stub, eyes narrowing at faint traces, tiny gray-white deposits, signs of abnormal combustion. He touches the metal with a gloved finger, then rubs it between thumb and forefinger, as if it might tell him the octane rating by feel. Evans watches, jaw tight. "You've blown her," Evans says quietly, unable to stop himself. "You'll have holes in pistons. Plugs will be fouled. Rings might be gone." Pembroke stands, looking pleased in a way that makes Evans want to hit him. "You sound confident." Evans meets his gaze. "I'm a fitter." Pembroke nods, as if that confirms a hypothesis. "Then you'll understand that engines do not fail out of spite. They fail because the operator exceeds safe limits, or the fuel behaves unpredictably." Hargreaves' voice goes hard. "The V-1s behave unpredictably. They don't wait for safe limits." A beat of silence. Pembroke closes his folder with a soft slap. "Walk with me." He turns toward the operations hut without waiting. It's an order delivered with the assumption of obedience. Hargreaves follows. Evans starts to move too. Pembroke glances back. "Not you, Corporal. Not yet." Evans stops as if he's hit a wall. McLeod remains with him, standing beside the Spitfire like a guard. Inside the operations hut, the air is warmer and smells of stale tea and wet wool. A WAF corporal sits at the plotting table, headphones on, pencil poised, eyes flicking between men and the map. She looks up as Pembroke enters and immediately looks down again, trained to see without seeing. Pembroke gestures toward a small side room. Hargreaves steps in. The room is cramped. A desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet. The window is blacked out. The only light is a shaded lamp that makes everyone's face look guilty. Pembroke closes the door. "Sit," he says. Hargreaves sits. His legs feel suddenly heavy, like they've remembered gravity. Pembroke remains standing, leaning back against the desk with the casual confidence of a man who holds the pen that can end careers. "You're not the first," Pembroke says. Hargreaves's eyes narrow. "Not the first what?" "Not the first to come back from a diver patrol with an engine showing signs of overboost and abnormal detonation," Pembroke replies. "We've had anomalies." Hargreaves holds his gaze. "Then you know." Pembroke's mouth tightens. "I know pilots are desperate. I know ground crews are inventive. And I know that if the Luftwaffe doesn't kill you, a connecting rod through the crankcase will." Hargreaves leans forward. "Then why ask me like it's a crime?" Pembroke's eyes flicker. "Because it is a crime, on paper." The words hang in the warm, stale air. Hargreaves feels anger flare, anger at the war, at the bureaucracy, at the idea that saving London might still be punished if the wrong signature is missing. Pembroke opens the folder again, revealing forms and typed sheets. "You will tell me precisely what was in that tank." Hargreaves hesitates. If he names it, he implicates Evans. If he refuses, he makes himself the target. But there's a third option, one men like Pembroke always prefer: cooperation that keeps responsibility diffuse. "I don't know the exact proportions," Hargreaves says. "I know it wasn't standard. I know it was higher octane than our usual." Pembroke nods, as if expecting that answer. "Your mechanic will know. He'll tell me." Hargreaves's voice drops. "He won't if you threaten him." Pembroke's gaze hardens. "Flight lieutenant, do you think I've come here to punish a corporal? I've come here to stop aircraft falling out of the sky." Hargreaves studies him. "Then stop asking questions like a prosecutor." Pembroke exhales through his nose. The mask slips just slightly, and for a moment he looks tired. "You want the truth?" Pembroke says. "The truth is, we are behind. The V1 is a new kind of threat, cheap, fast, relentless. The best counter is speed. We can tune engines, we can shave paint, we can lighten aircraft. But fuel is where you can buy immediate performance." Hargreaves' eyes fix on him. "So you're here to steal our trick?" Pembroke doesn't deny it. "I'm here to assess it." Hargreaves sits back, suspicion mixing with a reluctant hope. "Assess it for what?" Pembroke's voice lowers, becoming almost confidential. "For official adoption, or for official suppression?" The choice feels like a knife turned in the hand. Hargreaves thinks of the jerry cans, the unmarked cans, the way they appeared. He thinks of rumors, of fuel diverted from American stocks, of additives, of mixtures cooked up by men who weren't meant to improvise chemistry on a frontline station. He realizes something else, too. If Pembroke is here, then the Air Ministry already knows something is happening. They're not chasing a rumor. They're chasing proof. Hargreaves leans forward again. "If you make this official, how many lives do you save?" Pembroke's eyes narrow, the engineer in him fighting the administrator. "If it works and doesn't destroy engines, potentially thousands. If it works and destroys engines anyway, you trade civilian lives for pilots. The equation is ugly." "And if you suppress it?" Hargreaves asks. Pembroke's answer is quiet. "Then you go back to being just barely fast enough. And more divers get through." Silence settles again. Outside, Hargreaves can hear faint movement, Boots, voices, the station continuing to run like a machine that doesn't stop for moral dilemmas. Pembroke taps a page in his folder. There's another matter. Hargreaves' stomach tightens. Go on. Pembroke looks him in the eye. Where did the fuel come from? Hargreaves hesitates. That question is more dangerous than octane ratings, because fuel doesn't just appear. Fuel is supply chains, paperwork, theft, black markets, quiet agreements. Fuel is a trail that leads to someone who doesn't want to be seen. I don't know, Hargreaves says. Pembroke studies him as if weighing whether he believes it. Then he says something that makes Hargreaves' blood run cold. I think you do. And I think you'll tell me, because I've already spoken to someone else. Hargreaves' eyes narrow. Who? Pembroke doesn't answer immediately. He lets the suspense do its work. Then he says, almost casually, a pilot from another station. One who didn't make it back. His aircraft was recovered from the sea. His logbook was still in his pocket. Hargreaves feels a chill despite the warm room. And? Pembroke flips to a page in the folder and slides it across the desk. A scrap of paper, damp-stained, with hurried handwriting, numbers, letters, and a phrase that doesn't belong in any official RAF document. A location, a time, and two words that don't make sense until they do. Night delivery. Pembroke watches Hargreaves' face. Flight Lieutenant, he says softly, your station isn't the only one using forbidden fuel. Someone is distributing it. And if they're doing it without authorization, they're either a patriot or a saboteur. Outside, through the thin wall, Hargreaves hears a knock at the operations hut door, hard, urgent. A voice calls out, Wing Commander, another diver plot, multiple tracks. Pembroke's head turns toward the door, then back to Hargreaves, eyes sharp with decision. We can argue ethics after, he says. Right now, we test your miracle. And in that moment, Hargreaves understands the trap. If the forbidden fuel works again tonight, it becomes impossible to bury. If it fails, it becomes easy to punish. Pembroke opens the door. Cold air rushes in, and the war, indifferent to paperwork, demands another answer in minutes.
The operations hut snaps from tense quiet to controlled chaos in a single breath. The WAAF at the plotting table bends over the map, pencil moving fast as voices overlap in clipped phrases, bearings, ranges, tracks, turned into a living picture of death moving toward the coast. Multiple divers, someone says, at least 3, possibly more behind. Pembroke steps out of the side room with Hargreaves right behind him, both men wearing different kinds of urgency, one born of survival, the other born of consequences. Hargreaves' Spitfires sits down the runway, dead engine, cooling metal, a victory turned into scrap. Evans stands beside it like a man darting a fallen friend. When he sees Hargreaves return with Pembroke, his eyes narrow. McLeod is there too, arms folded, posture rigid, watching Pembroke like he's watching a man reach toward a loaded weapon. Pembroke doesn't waste time. You have another aircraft prepared? The duty engineering officer, squadron leader Colin Reese, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, appears as if summoned by the word prepared. He's a man who lives between rules and reality, and his face says he already knows which side the station has been living on. We've got 2 serviceable, Reese says. One's a Mark 14, one's a Mark 9, both ready for diver patrol. Pembroke's gaze flicks to Evans. And can you replicate your mixture? Evans's mouth tightens. Sir, with respect. With urgency, Corporal, Pembroke cuts in. Evans glances at Hargreaves. The pilot looks exhausted, still breathing like he's been running, but his eyes are steady. "It's your call," Hargreaves says quietly, "but they're coming." Evans swallows. "I can," he admits, "if I've got the tins." Pembroke turns to Reese. "Get me the tins." Reese hesitates, just long enough to betray the truth. The station's chain of command already knows more than it admits. Then he nods once. He moves off, barking orders. Men run. Boots slap concrete. A trolley squeaks. Somewhere a starter cart engine kicks over. The station is a body jolted awake by the word incoming. McLeod steps closer to Evans, lowering his voice. "If this goes wrong a second time, it won't be just engines and forms. They'll look for theft." Evans doesn't look away from the runway. "They can look." "You're not hearing me," McLeod says. "They'll look for a network." Evans finally meets his eyes. There is a network. The words land heavy. McLeod's throat tightens. "Who?" Evans's gaze flicks toward the perimeter road, dark, empty but for the memory of a canvas lorry and unmarked cans. "Not who you think," he says, "and not who you can arrest with a neat little report." Before McLeod can press, Reese returns, followed by 2 airmen carrying jerrycans. They set them down beside a waiting Spitfire Mark 14, another Griffin-powered beast, its nose glistening with frost, its wing surfaces dull under the blackout lamps. Pembroke crouches beside the cans, inspecting them like evidence at a crime scene. He doesn't open them yet. He looks at Evans. "Explain," he says. "In plain terms, what are you doing?" Evans wipes his hands on a rag that's already filthy. "We're spiking standard pool petrol with higher octane fuel. Not enough to change the whole tank, just enough to raise knock resistance so the pilot can run higher boost longer without detonation." Pembroke's eyes narrow, and yet Flight Lieutenant Hargreaves experienced detonation. Evans's voice turns defensive. "Because he used it. Properly. Hard. That's the point. And because if the proportion's off, if the tins aren't consistent, you can still get pinking under sudden boost. It's not magic." Pembroke straightens, cold and precise. "Then tonight you will do it under observation. You will measure what you add. You will record it." Evans almost laughs. "Sir, I don't have a laboratory. I've got a funnel, a rag, and men getting killed if we're slow." "Then be fast and accurate," Pembroke says. Hargreaves stands slightly apart, watching the new aircraft. He isn't flying again tonight. His nerves are frayed, and his aircraft is out. But he can't leave either. Not when the thing he started is about to become policy or scandal. A second pilot approaches, Flying Officer Alan "Al" Mercer, younger, clean-faced in the way men only look when they haven't yet been ground down by years of sorties. "Sir," Mercer says to Rees, then glances at Pembroke and Hargreaves. "I'm up?" Rees nods. "You're blue too. Diver Patrol." Mercer's eyes drift to the jerrycans. The smell is faint but present, a chemical sweetness cutting through petrol's usual sting. He wrinkles his nose. "What the hell is that?" Evans answers before anyone else can. "Speed." Mercer looks from Evans to Hargreaves. "Is this true?" Hargreaves holds his gaze. "It caught a diver. It also nearly cost me my engine." Mercer's grin falters. He's brave, but he's not stupid. "So why?" "Because more are coming," Hargreaves says, "and because being nearly fast enough isn't enough anymore." Mercer's eyes flick back to the aircraft, then to the dark beyond the runway, where the night hides London and the people asleep under thin ceilings. He nods once. Evans moves quickly now. Hose, funnel, rag. He works with the sharp concentration of a man, diffusing something that might explode. Rees stands close, watching the process, not interfering, but making sure nothing looks sloppy. Pembroke observes with a notebook, writing down proportions in a tight, neat hand. McLeod lingers just outside their circle, feeling useless and very aware that he's witnessing something that will either be celebrated in secret or punished loudly. Evans finishes, caps the filler, and smacks the panel once, gentle, like sealing an oath. Mercer climbs into the cockpit. He straps in, checks switches. The starter trolley engages. The Griffin coughs, then roars to life, a deep-throated bellow that shakes the air. For a moment, everything seems normal. Then Mercer raises the revs slightly. A faint metallic tick appears in the sound. Subtle, but there. Evans' head snaps up. Hold it steady. Mercer keeps it at that setting. The tick comes and goes, like a warning light you can't quite see. Pembroke leans in, eyes sharp. That's detonation? Evans' face hardens. That's the edge. Mercer's voice comes through the canopy, muffled but clear enough. Can I take her up? Evans hesitates, then nods. Keep your boost disciplined until you need it. And when you need it, use it like you mean it. Mercer gives a quick thumbs up. Reese signals chalks away. The Spitfire rolls, turns, lines up. The runway becomes a narrow promise again. Mercer pushes the throttle forward, and the aircraft accelerates, tail lifting, wheels humming. It takes off cleanly, climbing into the black. Control's voice crackles from the hut, relayed by the wireless operator. Blue 2 airborne, Vector 160, diver track approaching coast, Angels 1. On the ground, Pembroke watches the disappearing aircraft with the expression of a man who has just placed a bet using someone else's life as the stake. Hargreaves stands beside him, face unreadable. If he loses the engine over the sea, Pembroke doesn't look away. Then we learn. Hargreaves's voice goes low, dangerous. He's not a test pilot. Pembroke finally turns, meeting his gaze. Tonight, Flight Lieutenant, everyone is a test pilot. Minutes pass like hours. In the hut, pencils scratch across maps. A WAAF calls out bearings. A controller answers, steady as a metronome. Outside, men stare into the sky, searching for a light that means success or a flash that means death. Then the radio spits words that make Evans's stomach drop. Control, Blue 2, visual on diver, closing. A pause, then strained, boost up, engine rough, still closing. Evans closes his eyes for half a second, as if that can change the sound in the air. Mercer's voice again, tighter now. I'm on him. I'm on him. Static surges. For 2 heartbeats, there's nothing but hiss. McLeod's hand unconsciously goes to the collar of his greatcoat, gripping it like a lifeline. Then Mercer returns, breathless. Diver destroyed. Gunfire. Explosion. I'm clear. Relief ripples through the men on the ground like warmth. But Mercer's next words cut through it. Control, my engine's running hot. Oil pressure fluctuating. I'm turning back. Evans looks at Pembroke, fury and fear in his eyes. You hear that? That's not learning. That's killing engines, killing pilots. Pembroke's jaw tightens. Bring him home. Hargreaves watches the sky, trying to will Mercer's aircraft into existence. And when it finally appears, low, fast, wobbling slightly on approach, the station holds its breath again. Mercer lands hard. Not as hard as Hargreaves did, but hard enough to speak of stress and haste. The moment he stops, he yanks the canopy back and rips his mask off, gulping cold air like a drowning man. Evans runs to him. How bad? Mercer's eyes are wide, adrenaline still burning. She nearly shook herself apart when I pushed boost, but she went. I caught it. I killed it. He laughs once, sharp and disbelieving. I caught the bloody thing. Pembroke arrives, notebook in hand. Did you observe detonation? Mercer stares at him. I heard something like a hammer in the engine, but it held. Pembroke scribbles. Duration at high boost? Mercer looks at Hargreaves, then back at Pembroke. Long enough. Evans's face is tight with frustration. You're writing numbers while we're gambling lives. Pembroke closes his notebook slowly. And you're pouring unverified fuel into frontline aircraft. Don't pretend you're not gambling too. The 2 men lock eyes. Engineer and mechanic, both convinced they're the one being realistic. Then Reese steps in, voice urgent. Another plot coming in. And another. We can't keep doing this blind. Pembroke looks at the Spitfire's still ticking engine, then at Evans, then at Hargreaves. I want a sample, Pembroke says. Tonight, from the source tins. I want it sent to Farnborough by dawn. Evans's voice goes flat. If you send it, you expose whoever's bringing it. Pembroke's eyes sharpen. Yes. McLeod feels the shape of the truth emerging. This isn't just about speed anymore. It's about supply lines, secrecy, and someone operating inside Britain with fuel no one admits exists. Evans looks toward the dark perimeter road again, as if he expects the lorry to appear on cue. His jaw works. They won't like that, he says. Pembroke tilts his head. Who won't? Evans doesn't answer. Because at that exact moment, from beyond the blackout fence, a single headlamp flickers, briefly, deliberately, then goes dark again. A signal. McLeod sees it too. His spine stiffens. Evans's face drains of color, and for the first time, he looks not defiant, but genuinely afraid. They're here, he whispers. The single headlamp blink is gone as quickly as it appeared. One pulse of light in a world trained to hide. A wink from the perimeter that feels less like reassurance and more like a threat. Evans doesn't move at first. His hands hang at his sides, fingers flexing, as if he's deciding whether to run toward it or run away from it. McLeod's instincts take over. He turns his head slightly, scanning the fence line, the gaps between parked vehicles, the dark shapes of hedgerows. If someone is out there, they'll be using the same things he would use: angles, shadows, hesitation. Pembroke notices Evans's reaction and follows his gaze toward the road. That was your source, he says, not asking. Evans's jaw tightens so hard the muscles jump. It's a courier. A courier for whom? Pembroke presses. Evans finally looks at him, eyes bright with anger and fear. For people who don't want their names in your folder. Reese steps in, voice low and urgent. Wing Commander, we've got divers inbound. We cannot afford a perimeter incident right now. Pembroke doesn't blink. We cannot afford a clandestine supply chain feeding experimental fuel to operational units either. Hargreaves, still in his flying gear, still smelling faintly of sweat and oxygen rubber, stands between them like a man trying to stop two weather systems colliding. Arthur, he says, using Pembroke's first name without permission, if you spook whoever's bringing it, you lose your sample and we lose our speed. Pembroke's eyes narrow. And if I do nothing, I lose control. That's the point, Evans snaps. You never had it. For a moment, nobody speaks. The station's distant noises fill the gap. A trolley wheel squealing, a shouted order, the cough of an engine being warmed. Somewhere in the operations hut, the controller's voice continues its calm cadence, vectoring men toward targets that do not care about rank. Then McLeod moves. Right, he says, already walking. I'll go to the fence, quietly. One man, no lights, no dramatics. Reese catches his sleeve. McLeod shrugs him off. If it's friendly, I can wave him in. If it's not, I can call it in before we're dealing with a surprise and the dispersals. Pembroke starts to object, then seems to calculate. He gives a curt nod. Go, he says. And if you see anything that suggests sabotage, anything, do not engage, you report. McLeod doesn't bother answering. He melts into the darkness like he belongs there. Evans watches him go, then looks at Hargreaves, voice stripped down to something honest. They're not Germans. Hargreaves' eyes narrow. Then who? Evans shakes his head. Men like us. Men who think the war excuses everything. The perimeter track is colder away from the lamps. The wind has teeth here. McLeod keeps his steps soft, keeping to the shadow side of a hut, then to the darker strip along a hedge. He can feel the fence before he sees it, a line of metal and discipline separating RAF order from England's messy night. He reaches a gap where the wire meets a gate. He crouches, listening. Then he hears it. A vehicle idling with the throttle barely cracked, engine subdued. Canvas creaks. A man clears his throat, once, quiet. McLeod straightens and steps closer, still out of direct view. "Identify yourself," he calls, voice low. A pause. Then a voice answers from the dark, careful and almost amused. "If I identify myself, Sergeant, you'll have to arrest me." McLeod feels his pulse spike. "How do you know my rank?" The voice chuckles softly. "Your silhouette screams discipline." A shape moves closer, just enough to catch the faintest spill of light from the station beyond. A man in a civilian coat, cap pulled down. He carries himself like someone who has worn uniform before, but doesn't want to now. In his hand is a small metal canister, sample size, not a jerrycan. He holds it up, letting it catch the dim glow like bait. "You lot are burning through it faster than we can move it," the man says. "So tonight, we're changing procedure." McLeod keeps his hands visible. "Who are you working for?" The man tilts his head. "England." "That's not an answer," McLeod replies. The man shrugs. "It's the only one you'll get." He extends the canister through the fence gap, as if passing contraband in a prison yard. McLeod doesn't take it yet. "Why bring it at all?" McLeod asks. "Why not let the Air Ministry sort fuel properly?" The man's face stays mostly hidden, but his voice sharpens. "Because the Air Ministry moves at the speed of ink. The V1 moves at the speed of a funeral." McLeod's jaw tightens. "And if your mix destroys engines?" A beat. "Then pilots die," the man admits. "And if we don't do this, civilians die. You want me to pretend there's a clean choice?" McLeod reaches out and takes the canister. It's cold metal, heavy for its size. It smells faintly through the cap. Sweet, sharp, not like station fuel. "Last question," McLeod says. "Are you stealing this fuel?" The man leans closer to the fence, voice dropping. "I'm redistributing it." McLeod looks at him, trying to picture the chain. Tankers, depots, signatures, diversions made to look like spillage or accounting errors. Men with access, men with motive. Men who would tell themselves they're patriots. "Tell your engineer man," the courier says, "that if he sends samples to Farnborough with paperwork, he'll kill the supply. And if he kills the supply, he'll have blood on his forms." McLeod's grip tightens on the canister. "Then what do you want?" The courier's answer is immediate. Silence. And then, as if the night itself is the accomplice, the vehicle's engine rises slightly, and the shape retreats. Canvas shifts. Tires crunch softly. In seconds, the courier is gone, swallowed by the hedgerows and blackout. McLeod stands there a moment, listening to the fading idle, feeling the weight of the canister like a moral wound. Then the sky changes. Not with light. There is no moonlight to speak of tonight, but with sound, carried on the wind, a distant grinding buzz that makes every hair on the back of McLeod's neck stand up. A V1. Another one. It's closer than it should be. He runs back. At the dispersal, the station has already heard it too. Men look up instinctively, faces turned toward an invisible threat. The buzzing is not loud yet, but it has that unmistakable mechanical insistence, like a saw chewing through the world. Control's voice comes from the hut, amplified by open doors. "Diver crossing coast. Track." The rest is swallowed by urgency and movement. Rees is already shouting for a scramble. The problem is brutal and immediate. Their best diver chasers are the Griffin Spitfires, but the station can't afford to blow another engine tonight if the forbidden mix is inconsistent. And yet, if they don't use it, they may not catch the thing at all. Evans looks at Pembroke, then at Hargreaves. "You want your sample?" Evans says, voice tight. "Here it is." McLeod skids into the circle, breath steaming, and thrusts the canister toward Evans. From the courier. Pembroke's eyes widen a fraction. "You met him?" McLeod doesn't look away from Pembroke. Yes. Pembroke reaches for the canister. McLeod pulls it back. He said if you formalize this, paper it, ship it, stamp it, you kill the supply. Pembroke's mouth tightens. That is extortion. The buzzing grows louder. Not close yet, but approaching. Steady, unhurried, obscene. Hargreaves steps forward, voice slicing through the argument. Stop. Decide. Pembroke stares at the canister like it's a live grenade. In his world, samples go to labs, and labs produce authority. In this world, authority arrives too late. He looks at the runway, then at the men, then at the operations hut where another pencil line is racing inland. You have one aircraft, Pembroke says finally, and one chance to prove whether this mixture is worth the risk. Reese nods sharply. Mercer can go again. Mercer is already moving, helmet in hand, face pale but determined. I'll take her. Evans grabs his arm, eyes fierce. Listen to me. No hero boost until you're positioned. When you push it smoothly. Don't shock the engine. Mercer nods, swallowing. Understood. Evans and Reese work together. Faster than before, but more deliberate. Measured pour, controlled mix, eyes on each other's hands. Pembroke watches closely, not writing now, memorizing, as if he's finally accepted that tonight's record will be carried in men's heads, not folders. The Griffin starts. The engine note steadies. The metallic tick threatens, then fades as Mercer holds revs stable. Chocks away. Mercer rolls. The Spitfire accelerates into the night, and for a moment, the station is silent, except for the roar receding into darkness, and that other sound. The V-1's buzz, now clearly audible beyond the field, like the war itself, humming toward a target. Hargreaves stands beside McLeod and Pembroke, eyes locked on the sky. You know what the real forbidden mix is? Hargreaves says quietly. Hargreaves continues anyway. It's not just fuel. It's desperation and invention and rule-breaking and faith poured into a machine until it goes faster than it was ever meant to go. McLeod watches the black horizon, imagining Mercer out there, chasing a glow. And when it stops buzzing, McLeod murmurs, someone somewhere holds their breath. Minutes pass. The controller's voice rises and falls from the hut. Bearings shift. Range closes. Then Mercer's voice cracks through the wireless, strained but alive. Visual, closing fast. A pause. Then, louder, urgent. Boost up, now, she's going. The station holds its breath. Static. Then Mercer again, a burst of triumph threaded with fear. Diver destroyed. Explosion behind me. I'm clear. Relief hits like warmth. But it doesn't last. Mercer's next words are clipped, controlled panic. Engines rough. Oil pressure dropping. I'm coming back. Fast as I can. Evans's face goes gray. Pembroke's jaw tightens. Hargreaves closes his eyes for 1 second, as if bargaining with whatever listens. The Spitfire appears low over the field, landing light flicking briefly, then off. Mercer drops the wheels and comes in steep, committing hard. The aircraft touches down, skips, then bites the runway, and rolls out in a long, shuddering line. It stops. The engine coughs once, twice, then dies, the propeller slowing to stillness like a closing eye. Mercer shoves the canopy back, gasping cold air, face slick with sweat. Evans reaches in first. You alive? Mercer nods, laughing once, thin and shocked. Alive. And the diver? Hargreaves asks, already knowing. Mercer's grin is wild. Dead. For a moment, it feels like victory. Not a parade victory, a scraped-knuckle victory, the kind you pay for. Pembroke steps in, eyes on the engine. We've now destroyed, or nearly destroyed, 2 engines for 2 divers. Evans's voice is tired, raw. How many divers would have hit if we didn't? Pembroke doesn't answer, because he can't. He can only look at the dead propeller and the living pilot, and the empty sky where the V-1 would have been. McLeod holds the canister, what remains of it, like evidence that doesn't belong in any official box. "So what now?" he asks. Pembroke looks at each of them in turn, and for the first time, his voice loses its clinical edge. "Now," he says, "we do the only thing war ever allows. We choose the least bad option." He takes the canister from McLeod, but instead of pocketing it like a trophy, he turns and hands it back to Evans. Evans's eyes narrow. "What are you doing?" Pembroke's gaze is steady. "I'm not sending it tonight." Hargreaves watches him carefully. Pembroke shakes his head once. "Because if I formalize it before we understand it, I turn improvisation into doctrine, and doctrine kills indiscriminately." Evans grips the canister. "So you'll let us keep doing it in the dark?" Pembroke's voice drops. "No, I'll come back with a plan that doesn't require midnight couriers and unmarked tins." McLeod studies him. "And if the next diver comes tomorrow night?" Pembroke looks toward the horizon, where the buzz could return any moment. "Then tomorrow night," he says, "you'll do what you did tonight. You'll break rules to save people, and I'll decide whether to help you quietly or stop you publicly." The words hang like smoke. Hargreaves steps closer to the Spitfire, placing a gloved hand on the cowling, feeling the heat fading through metal. "There's your evidence," he says softly, "a dead engine and a living city." Pembroke's eyes flick to him. "And there's your cost." Evans looks down at his hands that fix things, hands that keep men alive, hands that tonight poured a mixture that might be the difference between a house standing and a street on fire. Out on the far road, beyond the fence, there is no headlamp now, no signal, just darkness. But the station understands the message anyway. The supply chain is watching, waiting, deciding whether Tangmere is still safe to feed. And somewhere across the channel, more V1s sit on ramps like crude insects, their pulse jets ready to buzz again, ready to force men into choices that don't fit neatly into any regulation. In the operations hut, the WAAF corporal resets her pencil point and listens for the next plot call. Outside, Evans tightens the cap on the canister, and Hargreaves, eyes on the night, realizes the forbidden fuel mix isn't just a trick to make Spitfires faster. It's a secret war inside the war, fought with chemistry, courage, and the kind of silence that can save you one night and destroy you the next.